This is not going to shock you. There are some people out there that don't like me. In fact, they don't like the way I talk. As I'm speaking to you right now, headline, Clay Travis rips Ilhan Omar. Why doesn't she go back to Somalia? Well, that's not really exactly what I said. Ilhan Omar said that, some of you may have seen me on Sean Hannity talking about this last night. I also said it on this show, but it didn't get picked up here. Ilhan Omar said that America was one of the worst countries in the world. She said that. Now, I don't think Ilhan Omar actually believes that. And in order to prove that she didn't believe it, I pointed out that she was not born in the United States. She was actually born in Somalia. And so my argument is, if you have dual citizenship, I don't. I'm only an American. But if I thought America was one of the worst countries in the world and I had been born somewhere else, I would go back to the other country that I was born in if I actually believed it. I don't think that's a crazy perspective. If I were, let's say that I was born in Switzerland and my name was, this is my brother-in-law, his last name's Blomquist. My sister is now last name Blomquist. Let's say that my last name was Blomquist. I was Clay Blomquist, and I was born in Switzerland. And I thought that America was one of the worst countries in the world. Do you know what I would do? I would move back to Switzerland. And I've made fun of Rosie O'Donnell, but Rosie O'Donnell at least said, if Trump wins, I'm leaving, and then she went to Ireland. Now, that's what I was talking about with Sean Hannity last night. Many of you are going to be listening on the same radio network to Sean Hannity in a little bit. But I think it's funny, like Ireland got Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell, I bet, if you're Irish, would be like the 768th most famous American celebrity that you would want to move to Ireland. If you had to pick a famous celebrity to move to Ireland, I don't think the Irish people are like, boy, yes, we won. We got Rosie. I don't think the Irish people are like, we don't even want Rosie O'Donnell. Sydney Sweeney or Rosie O'Donnell? Who would you rather have in Ireland? Every man's like, well, we'd rather have, I don't have a great Irish accent, but they would all pick Sydney Sweeney. But you would go back if you lived truly, you thought, in one of the worst countries in the world, the United States, and you had the ability to go to a country that was better, you would go. Leave it aside from the United States. If you lived in, let's just talk about in the country, because we can all move from one state to another. If you lived in a state and you really thought you lived in the worst state in the United States, pick whatever state you want to be the worst. I am born and raised in Tennessee. I happen to think it's one of the best states. But if I thought my home state was awful, I would move to another state. If I thought that the city that I lived in, assuming you have the resources to be able to do it, which Ilhan Omar would, if you thought that you lived in a city that was awful, what is the worst city in America that we are not on in right now? I need to avoid getting tarred and feathered by picking the worst city in America. I think I said the worst city in America, and I bet we're number one in this city, and I bet I think I said Gary, Indiana. I'm sorry. If we are number one in Gary, Indiana, I take it back. Whatever city we're not on in is the worst city in America, clearly. If I thought that I lived in the worst city in America, I would move. Like, this is not, they're all, like, that's one headline, right? Second headline. Outkick co-founder tells Representative Ilhan Omar to go back to Somalia in Hannity interview. That's the Independent. So there's all these headlines. People are like, oh, go back to your... No. I would say that to anybody. If you hate the country that you're in and you can leave, if you hate the state that you're in and you can leave, if you hate the city that you're in and you can leave, you should leave. A lot of you are listening to me right now. You used to live in California and now you live in Tennessee or Texas or Florida. You moved because you didn't like what you saw in the place that you were living. A ton of you, Buck himself, moved lifelong New York City, born and raised, got married and decided to move to Florida because he didn't like the choices that were being made in New York City. The great thing about the United States is you can move to a new city or state. But if you had the luxury, it is a luxury, to have multiple passports, which I presume Ilhan Omar does. I would think she's still a resident of Somalia since she was born there. That is, I assume she is still a citizen in some way. Then she should go back to Somalia if she thinks America sucks. If she thinks she lives in one of the worst places in the world, which is what she said, then she should live in a better place in the world. Like, how is that remotely controversial? And so a lot of this stuff sometimes, so go back to Somalia. Yeah, do I know that that's going to pop and cut through? Yeah, but I would say go back to Switzerland. Go back to Colombia. Go back to Japan. If you think it sucks here and you are a citizen of multiple countries, you should leave. If you truly believe this is one of the worst countries in the world and you have an option to live in a better one, you should leave. Now, the point on this is she's not actually leaving, which means she knows the argument she's making is BS. But sometimes you have to be provocative and cut directly to the essence of an argument to point out how illegitimate and dishonest the argument is. Because we live in an era and a world where totally dishonest arguments are made every day. We're talking about Iran. About 70% of Republicans, most of whom voted for Trump, believe that we should attack Iran and end, if necessary, their nuclear weapons capabilities forever. Some people disagree. Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think those people want worse things for America. I don't think their argument is rooted in wanting something different than I want. I think they have a good faith argument that they're concerned that we will get drawn into another Iraq or another Afghanistan. And that if we attack, I can probably make their argument as well or better than they can, that is going to ultimately work not to the benefit of the United States. I happen to disagree. I don't think their intent in making the arguments that they are making is to actually make America worse. Good, reasonable, rational people can disagree on issues. How many of y'all are married? My wife probably disagrees with me on things more than any of you do on a daily basis. If you are, I've been married for 20 plus years. If you are a man listening to me for 20 plus years and your wife has agreed with everything that you have said or done in those 20 plus years, guess what? You're a damn liar. There isn't a single one of you out there that can even have uniformity of agreement on everything inside of your own house. That's why men have man caves. That's why we vanish. That's why men spend so much time in the bathroom. We're just looking for some place, no matter how small it is, where we can't be disagreed with. This is the whole purpose of the man cave. Every one of you does it. Like, why do men spend so much time in garages? Because women usually aren't there. Like, he put there are guys right now listening to me, you barely even have a garage. You can't even fit a car in there. Somehow you got a refrigerator full of beer in there. Your car hasn't run for 20 years. You got the hood up. It's just to escape. So it's not a surprise to me that if you can't even agree on everything with your wife. And by the way, I'm not saying the husband's always right, by the way. God forbid, because my wife might be listening. She is also saying the same thing when she's out with her girlfriends. Do you know what my moron husband did? Inevitably, all the time. So why would you expect that 77 million people who voted for Donald Trump are going to agree on everything? You shouldn't. Should have real arguments. Sometimes it's going to end up on the right side. Sometimes it's going to be on the wrong side. There's nothing wrong with being in the minority on an argument. Sometimes people make really bad choices. This nation made an awful choice during COVID. Buck and I were in the minority when we said, yeah, we don't think we should shut down schools. Yeah, I don't like the idea that we're trying to distinguish between essential and non-essential businesses, because if you own a business, every business is essential because it's paying for people to be able to have their lives, make their mortgage payments. I don't think people should be told, hey, you're not allowed to go on a beach and get on a paddleboard, and if you do it, the governor of California is going to arrest you. Those were things that were wrong. Maybe we shouldn't have put up crime tape around playgrounds. Maybe we shouldn't have taken rims off basketball courts outside. Maybe we shouldn't have told people, go sit on the couch, watch Netflix and eat Cheetos, and expected that everybody wasn't going to end up super fat and way more unhealthy than they ever would have been if they had just gotten COVID and dealt with it. So sometimes being in the minority of an argument is good because the minority argument can be the right one. That's why the First Amendment works, because over time you can convince people, hey, I'm right on this, even if most people, when you initially start making the argument, may not agree with you. When you look at this Iran situation, the fact that they're trying to say, oh, everybody in Trump's base doesn't agree, well, of course not. You and your wife can't even agree on everything inside of your house. Why would you expect 77 million voters outside of the house to agree on everything? It's good. Conflict is good. Because in theory, the entire basis of the United States is the more arguments we make, the better result we end up with. The best argument over time is going to win. That's why Trump, I think, has gone from 64 million roughly votes in 2016 to 77 million in 2024, because the more time people spent listening to his arguments, the more they came to say, you know what? This guy is actually getting to the right place more often than not. Now, is he a bull in a china shop on the way? Yeah. And sometimes does he make a bigger mess than he needs to getting to the right result? 1,000,000,000%. But that doesn't mean he's wrong, and I think he's going to get to the right place on Iran.